Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger was staring back? You smile, you work, you function. But deep inside, something's aching, something's missing. They told you, just move on. Be strong. But no one told you that some pain doesn't go away. It hides. And when it hides, it grows roots in your habits, in your reactions, in the way you see yourself. This video isn't just about trauma. It's about the shadow that trauma creates, the side of you that you never wanted to meet, but must if you ever want to feel whole again. Because here's what no one talks about. True healing doesn't come from ignoring your past, but from having the courage to face the part of you it created. And in the darkness of that shadow, you'll find something sacred, unseen power, locked potential, and a self that's been waiting to come home. In a moment, I'll share a story about a man who had everything on the outside, but was slowly dying inside until he met the version of himself he'd buried long ago. But first, take a breath and ask yourself, what part of me have I been afraid to meet? If something stirs inside you while watching this, don't scroll away. It's not just a video, it's a mirror. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to look into it. You were never just quiet. You were protecting a voice that no one ever listened to. You were never just strong. You were holding together pieces that no one knew were broken. And you were never just fine. You just didn't think anyone would believe the truth. That's how invisible wounds work. They don't show up in scans or stitches. They show up in the way you flinch when someone raises their voice, in the way you sabotage good things, because some part of you still believes you don't deserve them. Trauma isn't just what happened to you. It's what happened inside you when no one noticed. It's the beliefs you adopted to survive. I'm not enough. I'm too much. Love is dangerous. And over time, survival becomes identity. You think you're just bad at relationships, but really, you're afraid of closeness, because closeness once meant pain. You think you don't trust people. But maybe you just learned too early that even love can hurt. And the worst part, the pain doesn't scream, it whispers, it masks itself, until one day, you don't know if your reactions are yours, or just your wounds talking. There's a reason this feels so confusing. Because trauma doesn't wear a name tag. It doesn't say, "Hi, I'm a wound." It says, "Hi, I'm you." It hides in your personality, in who you've become. But here's the truth. You are not your trauma. You are the awareness that sees it. You are the courage that's willing to feel it. And you are the soul that was never broken, just buried. This is where healing begins. Not by changing who you are, but by finally meeting who you've been hiding. So I ask you, when did you first learn that it wasn't safe to be you? And who might you become if you finally gave that version of yourself a voice? What if I told you that the parts of yourself you're most ashamed of might hold the keys to your healing? Carl Jung called it the shadow, not because it's evil, but because it's what you've hidden in the dark, out of fear, shame, rejection, or pain. The shadow isn't just anger, jealousy, or selfishness, it's also vulnerability, sensitivity, desire. Anything you were told wasn't acceptable, anything you had to lock away to survive. Imagine this. As a child, you cried easily, but someone said, "Don't be so dramatic." So you swallowed your tears and buried your tenderness, or you asked too many questions. And someone said, "Stop being difficult," so you stopped asking and buried your curiosity. That's how the shadow forms. Piece by piece, your true self is fragmented, hidden not just from the world, but from you. You didn't kill these parts of you. You just learned it was safer to exile them. And here's the paradox. What we bury doesn't disappear. It waits. It waits in your dreams. It whispers in your anger. It erupts when you least expect, during conflict, in relationships, in moments of stress. That's not weakness. That's your shadow knocking, asking to be seen. Jung didn't say to destroy the shadow. He said to integrate it, to turn toward it, and ask, what part of me have I been at war with? And more importantly, what would happen if I stopped fighting? The shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that carried the pain so you could survive. It held your grief, your rage, your longing, because no one else would. And now you're strong enough to return, not to judge it, but to understand it, not to fix it, but to listen. Because when you avoid the shadow, it owns you. But when you embrace it, it becomes your ally. Think of the people you admire most, those who radiate depth, wisdom, presence. They didn't get there by avoiding their darkness. They got there by sitting in it and learning to see in the dark. The shadow is your teacher, and the classroom, your triggers, your patterns, your pain. Have you ever overreacted and then thought, why did I do that? That was your shadow speaking. Not to hurt you, but to alert you, to say, there's a wound here that you haven't tended to. And here's the truth Jung offers us. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So if you keep ending up in the same arguments, attracting the same kinds of people, sabotaging your own joy, it's not random, it's a signal from within. The shadow isn't asking you to be perfect, it's asking you to be honest, to admit, yes, I feel rage sometimes. Yes, I'm afraid of being abandoned. Yes, I crave love and fear it at the same time. And in that radical honesty begins liberation. Because here's the alchemy. When you face what you fear inside yourself, you take back your power. You are no longer driven by what you don't see. You become conscious, whole, and deeply human. So today, maybe just begin with this. What is one thing you've always hated in others? Now ask, could this be a part of me that I've refused to see? Not to shame, not to condemn, but to understand. The journey into the shadow is not easy, but it's the path back to yourself. You're not broken. You're layered. And every layer has something sacred to show you. You don't remember the exact moment it happened. There was no warning, no announcement. Just one day, your innocence broke. Maybe it was a scream in the hallway. Maybe it was silence after you cried. Or maybe it was the way someone looked at you, as if you were too much. Childhood trauma doesn't always come wrapped in violence. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it sounds like, why can't you be more like your brother? Stop crying. It's not a big deal. Good kids don't talk back. And just like that, you learned. Learned that love could be conditional, that expressing hurt made people uncomfortable, that your needs were too much. So you adapted. You smiled when you were hurting. You became the helper, the quiet one, the achiever. You learned to anticipate emotions, to walk on eggshells, to avoid conflict, to keep peace at any cost. But peace came at a price. Your joy became muted, your voice became cautious, and your true self, raw, emotional, radiant, was wrapped in silence and locked away. That's how the shadow was born. Not from evil, but from survival. It formed in the moments you weren't seen, in the space between who you were and who you were told to be. Children don't stop loving their parents to survive trauma. They stop loving themselves. That's the tragedy. That's the wound we carry into adulthood. A silent question behind every interaction. If I show this part of me, will you still love me? And when the answer is unclear, we hide, we disconnect, we protect. But what's protected becomes imprisoned. Your anger, your grief, your joy, yes, even joy, gets buried. And years later, You wonder why life feels numb, why you're successful but empty, why intimacy feels threatening, why a kind word makes you suspicious, why you sabotage peace even when you crave it. It all goes back to a child who needed to feel safe being real and didn't. This isn't about blaming, it's about naming. Because what you can name, you can heal. Every inner child carries a story. Some are loud, some are whispering beneath your choices. Jung believed that until we reconnect with this child, this buried self, we'll repeat the same cycles, the same pain, the same fragmentation. So ask yourself, what version of you had to disappear so you could belong? And what would happen if you invited them back? Close your eyes for a moment. Picture that child. Not what they looked like, but what they felt like. The spark in their curiosity, the ache in their silence, the wonder and the wounds. Whisper to them, you didn't deserve that. You weren't too much. I see you now. That is how shadow work begins. By going back, not to relive the pain, but to reclaim the parts of you that pain tried to erase. Because healing isn't becoming someone new. It's remembering who you were before the world told you to forget. And maybe, just maybe, the child in you has been waiting for you all along. At some point in your life, you decided who you had to be. Maybe not with words, but with silence, with instincts, with survival. You became the responsible one, the funny one, the strong one. Not because it came naturally, but because it was necessary. It was how you earned love, how you avoided punishment, how you made sense of a world that didn't feel safe. That is how the mask forms. We call it personality. We celebrate it. We build lives around it. But beneath it is a self that never got to breathe. And here's the quiet truth. Your mask is not a lie. It's a layer that once protected you, but now might be suffocating you. Maybe you pride yourself on being independent, but deep down, you're terrified to rely on anyone, because trust once meant betrayal. Maybe you're always put together, but it's just armor to keep people from seeing the storm inside. Or maybe you're the peacemaker, but every time you bite your tongue, a part of you dies. Trauma doesn't just break you, it builds you. It molds your behaviors, your reflexes, your identity. And before you know it, you're not sure if you're living or just managing. This is the dilemma. The world rewards your mask, but your soul longs for your truth. Jung warned of this. He said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't do that until you know who you aren't. So take a moment. Ask yourself, what part of me is performative? What do I do just to feel safe, accepted, or invisible? Because healing isn't about destroying the mask. It's about loosening its grip. It's telling yourself, I can be strong and soft. I can be independent and ask for help. I can be composed and cry at night. You are not weak for questioning your identity. You are awakening. Awakening to the self that existed before the performance. The self that wasn't conditioned, but true. Let me tell you something few will. Your burnout isn't laziness. Your numbness isn't failure. Your anger isn't a flaw. They are signs, messages, cracks in the mask, inviting you back to your core. This is the hardest part, to let go of who you had to be, so you can become who you are. But you don't have to do it all at once. Begin with honesty, with softness, with moments of truth that scare you, but free you. Your identity was never the problem. It was the cage. And now you hold the key. You think you're avoiding pain. But really, pain is avoiding you. Hiding, waiting, repeating. Because what you avoid doesn't vanish. It grows teeth. It changes shape. It shows up in your life, disguised as problems. That sudden rage at your partner, shadow. That urge to scroll, drink, overwork, ghost people, shadow. That numbness at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, Feeling like a fraud? Yes. Shadow. Avoidance is clever. It tells you, don't go there. You've moved on. It's too dark, too painful. But while you're busy avoiding your shadow, it's driving your life from the back seat. And the cost? Let me show you. The cost is that constant anxiety. You're afraid, but don't know why. The cost is relationships that never feel safe, no matter how loving. The cost is sabotaging success because some part of you believes you don't deserve it. Avoiding your shadow costs you presence, joy, depth, and worst of all, it costs you. Because when you avoid a part of yourself, you fracture. You live in pieces, smiling on the outside, screaming on the inside. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, respected, accomplished, married, 2 kids. From the outside, a model of success. But every night, he drank. Not to celebrate, but to forget. To numb the ache he didn't understand. Until one day, in therapy, he said, "I don't feel like a person. I feel like a performance." And that moment, that was the crack, the beginning of truth. Because for the first time, he stopped escaping. He met the part of him that was still frozen at 8 years old, curled up in a room where no one came. He wept, not for the past, but for the boy who had to hide to survive. Shadow work isn't dramatic, it's subtle. A sudden honesty, a sob in the shower, a conversation you've been avoiding for 10 years. It's not loud, but it's real, and real heals. Avoidance, on the other hand, lies. It gives you temporary relief and permanent suffering. It tells you, you're okay. While it drains your life quietly, day by day, you don't need more distractions. You need truth. You don't need more affirmations. You need integration. This is what they don't tell you in the wellness world. You can't manifest your way out of trauma. You have to meet it, feel it, welcome it. Because your shadow is not here to destroy you. It's here to remind you of what was exiled, so you can bring it home. You keep saying, "I want peace." But peace doesn't come from running. It comes from turning around and walking back into the fire with love. So here's the question. What's one part of yourself you've been avoiding? And what is it costing you? Write it down. Speak it out loud. Whisper it to your heart. Begin. Because freedom starts where avoidance ends. There comes a moment in every journey when you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What happened to me?" That moment is when you meet your shadow, not through force, not through pressure, but through a quiet, radical act of turning inward, with curiosity instead of judgment. This isn't about fixing yourself, it's about finally listening. So how do you begin? Start with stillness. Shadow doesn't speak in noise. It speaks in discomfort, in the sudden irritation when someone triggers you, in the fear that rises before vulnerability, in the tears you brush away before anyone can see. Those moments, that's your shadow whispering, "There's something here." Start noticing your reactions, not to judge them, but to decode them. Ask, why did I get so angry? Why do I always feel small around this person? What am I really afraid will happen if I speak my truth? And don't stop there. Write it down. Journaling is one of the simplest and most powerful ways to meet your shadow. Not to write pretty stories, but raw truths. Ask your shadow, what do you want me to know? When did you first show up? What are you protecting me from? At first it might feel awkward, uncomfortable, even silly. But stay. Because as you write, something shifts. The part of you that has been buried for years finally speaks. It may sound like grief or rage or silence so thick it hurts. Let it. The goal isn't catharsis, it's connection. Shadow integration begins when we give presence to what we've ignored, when we say, "I'm willing to know all of me." Some days, this means sitting with a memory that stings. Other days, it means recognizing that your jealousy is really a cry for attention, that your coldness is a shield for past betrayal, that your perfectionism is just fear in fancy clothes. Another powerful practice? Mirror work. Not just to affirm, but to witness. Look at yourself. Really look. And say, I'm willing to see you, even the parts I've hidden. Don't rush it. The shadow doesn't open up to speed. It opens to sincerity. You don't need rituals, retreats, or gurus. You need honesty and courage, the quiet kind. Here's the truth most people avoid. Your shadow has already shaped your life. The question is, will you let it continue unconsciously? Or will you choose to meet it and shape your life with intention? The first contact is the hardest, but it's also the most empowering. Because once you look into the mirror and don't look away, you'll realize there's nothing in you that can't be understood, nothing that's too dark to be seen, and nothing that, when met with compassion, can't be healed. So tonight, before the world distracts you again, before your mind talks you out of it, sit down, take a breath, and ask, Shadow, what part of me have I been too afraid to love? Then listen, not for answers, but for honesty. That's where your freedom begins. At night, when your defenses sleep, your unconscious speaks. It doesn't use words. It speaks in symbols, in images, in emotions you can't explain. That's why dreams matter, because they are the purest voice of your shadow. Carl Jung believed dreams are not random. They're revelations, messages from the unconscious, trying to make you whole again. Not all dreams are prophecy, but all dreams are honest. They reflect the parts of you that your waking mind ignores. And sometimes, they scream truths you've been too afraid to face. Have you ever dreamed of being chased? That's not just fear. It might be a disowned part of yourself, trying to catch up with your conscious identity. Have you ever dreamed of falling? It might be a call to let go of control, of ego, of the mask you wear every day. Have you ever seen a shadowy figure and woke up sweating? That might not be something evil. It might be you, the part of you you've been hiding. The unconscious doesn't lie. It just doesn't speak English. It speaks in archetypes, in animals, in places you've never been, but somehow feel familiar. A house in a dream might be your psyche. The basement, your shadow. A broken mirror, your fractured identity. A storm, emotional chaos begging for release, Jung said. The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. And when you start listening, that door begins to open. So how do you understand your dreams? Don't overthink. Feel. Write them down the moment you wake. Not just the plot, but how you felt. Then ask, what part of me might this be about? Is this dream showing me something I'm ignoring in my waking life? You'll be surprised. Sometimes the monster is your repressed anger. The flood is your grief. The stranger is your potential. And once you see it, you can start a dialogue. You can ask, what are you here to teach me? What do I need to face? Some people dismiss dreams as noise, but those who learn to listen unlock doors within themselves that therapy alone can't open. Dreams are sacred, not because they're magical, but because they're honest. Your unconscious isn't trying to punish you. It's trying to complete you. And when you stop fearing your dreams, they become allies, guides, mirrors. So tonight, when you lie down, don't just sleep. Invite the shadow to speak. Say, I'm listening. I'm ready. Show me what I've been too afraid to see. And then trust. Because your soul has always known the way home. It's just been speaking. In symbols. We often think healing means getting rid of something, the fear, the anger, the part of us that doesn't fit. But real healing is not subtraction, it's integration. It's not about destroying your shadow. It's about understanding it, making peace with it, letting it have a seat at the table, not to lead, but to be heard. Jung never said the goal was perfection. He said the goal was wholeness. And wholeness requires contrast, light and dark, strength and softness, rage and compassion. You can't become whole by amputating parts of yourself. You become whole by loving the unlovable within you. So what does integration look like? It looks like not flinching when shame shows up, because you've heard its story. It looks like pausing before you lash out, because now you know where that rage comes from. It looks like seeing your jealousy and saying, I get it. You're scared I'm not enough. It's a dialogue, a relationship, a homecoming. Integration doesn't happen in one ceremony, one journal entry, one breakthrough. It's a lifelong dance. Some days it's graceful, other days it's messy. But every time you choose honesty over denial, presence over escape, compassion over judgment, you take a step toward peace. Think of your shadow like a wounded child. What would happen if, instead of punishing that child, you sat down and said, "Tell me where it hurts"? That's integration. It's choosing to befriend the part of you that used to terrify you. And in doing so, you become someone who can never be manipulated by shame again. Because when you own your darkness, no one can use it against you. You are no longer split, no longer hiding, no longer pretending. You are whole. And whole people are powerful. Not because they're flawless, but because they are present with all that they are. They don't need to control others because they've made peace within. They don't fear their shadow because they've named it. They don't chase love because they've reparented the part of them that never felt enough. So, ask yourself, what part of me needs an invitation to come home? You might be surprised. It's not the monster you feared. It's the protector, the part that stayed awake when everyone else left, the part that bore the pain so you could survive. And now, it's time to thank it, to stop running, to say, you've done your job, you can rest now. That is the art of integration, the quiet miracle of becoming fully human. You've spent years running from the parts of you that hurt. But what if those parts weren't just wounds? They were weapons, not to harm but to protect, to guide, to create. This is the power of a conscious shadow. Because once you've met your darkness, you stop being afraid of it. And when you stop fearing yourself, you become unstoppable. Think of the most magnetic people you've ever met. They have depth. They have edge. They carry a calm that says, I've been through fire and I don't flinch anymore. That calm, it's not confidence, it's integration. They've made peace with their rage. They've sat with their grief. They've stopped pretending and started embodying. You don't become powerful by rejecting your past. You become powerful by rewriting your relationship with it. Your shame can become empathy. Your anxiety can become sensitivity. Your trauma can become purpose, but only if you stop numbing it. Only if you stop burying it. Only if you choose to alchemize it. Let me share a story. There was a woman, quiet, withdrawn, anxious in every room. People thought she lacked confidence. What they didn't see was that she had spent years being silenced, gaslighted by those she loved most. One day she began shadow work, started journaling, speaking to the fear, naming the patterns, and something shifted. That same anxiety became intuition. That same silence became a wellspring of wisdom. She started leading healing circles, not because she had it all figured out, but because she had been there and survived. Your pain gives you authority, not over others, but over your own story. That is power. Not domination, but embodiment. Not performance, but presence. You stop needing to be liked because you're finally real. You stop chasing love because you've learned to sit with your shadow and still choose to stay. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more integrated ones, people who've walked through their own hell and come back with light. You can be that. You already are. You just forgot. So next time your shadow rises, don't panic. Don't suppress. Pause and ask, what strength is buried in this feeling? What truth is trying to emerge? Because rage can become a boundary. Fear can become clarity. Loneliness can become depth. And shame can become a mirror to your humanity. You don't have to wait until you're healed to live. You just have to live with awareness, with honesty, with all of you. That's what makes you magnetic. Not your perfection, but your presence. So here's your reminder. Your shadow isn't your flaw. It's your forge. And the fire you once feared is the very thing that will set you free. There's healing. And then there's alchemy. Healing says, let me fix what's broken. But alchemy says, let me turn pain into power, wounds into wisdom, darkness into depth. That's the sacred work of the shadow. You see, most of the world teaches you to rise above your pain, to transcend, to move on, to be positive. But shadow work asks you to go deeper, to descend, to sit with the ashes of who you were, and find the gold inside the grief. This isn't self-help. This is soul work. Because true transformation doesn't happen when you escape the fire. It happens when you become the flame. It's easy to love your light. But what about your sorrow, your fear, your jealousy, your silence? Can you love those too? Can you cradle the part of you that still feels like a child? Can you walk into the cave of your own psyche and not flinch? Because that's where your healing is. Not on the mountaintop, but in the basement, in the shadows, in the moment you stop running and finally say, I'm not afraid to feel anymore. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's what you've done, or at least, started. You've looked at the mirror. You've spoken to your pain. You've stopped calling yourself broken and started calling yourself becoming. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not damaged. You are a soul in the middle of alchemy. So what now? Now you live it. Not perfectly, not always gracefully, but honestly. When shame rises, you meet it. When the old wound stings, you breathe with it. When the shadow whispers, you listen. You let every crack become a doorway. You let every fear become a guide. You let every tear become water for the seed of your return. You are not here to erase your past. You are here to reclaim it, to hold it with compassion, to carry it with grace, to walk forward, not as someone who healed, but as someone who integrated. This is not the end. It's the beginning of a life lived with presence, with power, with all of you, light and shadow, joy and grief, wound and wonder. You are no longer fragmented. You are no longer hiding. You are home.